Hello, welcome to the episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. I'm your host today alongside DiMari Cooley. DiMari, thanks for coming on, previewing all the Week 8 NFL action. How's it going, man?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Excited to get into it today. Got a full slate of football on today and obviously into tomorrow as well. Started on Thursday night with the Bills over Tampa. It is Week 8. The season is flying by. I wanted to ask you first, before we get into some of our big games that we'll cover today, what are your thoughts overall going into the weekend, and what are some of your big matchups to look out for? We'll start with the Cowboys, and we'll get into the Jet game and some other games. But what is your overall feelings about going into Week 8 and some of the big games on tap?
I feel like it's going to be an exciting week of football. Last week left us with an exciting week, especially ending Monday with the Vikings beating the 49ers that probably nobody expected to happen without Justin Jefferson.
Nope.
So I feel like a lot of games this week, if Vikings once again, the team I'm really looking out for this week as they face Green Bay. Feel like they're turning this thing around. So I'm kind of excited to see how they're going to do moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Vikings, that was a surprising victory over the Niners. Niners have not looked good without Debo, and Jordan Addison absolutely went off. Kirk Cousins finally winning a game on primetime was definitely not expected among many fans, including myself. So, a lot of big games today, full slate. Looking forward to it. So we'll start here. We'll bounce around the league. We'll start with the Cowboys, Rams. Obviously, yourself, Cowboys fan. Then we'll get into my New York Jets as they're playing the New York Giants. We'll also get into the Jaguars Steelers game. And we'll also get into the Bengals, Niners as well, a couple other big games and a couple other things as well later on in the show. But we'll start with the Cowboys, Rams. First of all, before we get into this matchup, what have been your thoughts on the Cowboys? The last time we spoke, they were coming off the win against the Jets. Since that point, what have been your thoughts on the Cowboys this season?
It's been an emotional roller coaster watching the Cowboys this season. You come out against San Francisco and you just absolutely look the complete opposite of how you look. Like the first few weeks, especially defensively, all going into that game, you knew like the offense probably would have struggled, but not how they, struggled in that game. And then, they bounce back and they win a few games here and there, but they're still struggling offensively, especially in the red zone. So watching them these last few weeks, it's kind of, you never know what you're going to get from them. It's a very unpredictable team right now.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. It seems like that's been the case for a while. Two quick questions. Do you feel these red zone issues, because similar to, the Jets, we've had red zone issues all year, and you're hoping coming off the bye week they can get fixed. Do you see there any point being their red zone offense getting fixed or starting to become more efficient?
I do, but it's going to start with getting Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup more involved. That's where it's really going to start because we're getting inside the red zone. That space is condensed, so you only have between the 20 and the back of the end zone to really make anything happen. So unless we're getting those guys open, we're not going to do anything down in the red zone because Dak is kind of forced to throw in these tight windows because they're not getting that separation. But that also goes along with not being able to run a ball effectively. The defenses are stacking the box on us in the red zone because these guys aren't getting the separation and aren't getting open. So until we can find that healthy balance of getting them more involved and trying to open up the run game when we get down there, I don't see the red zone offense really changing anytime soon.
Yeah, it feels the same way with the Jets too. Between the 20s, it's great, but once you get inside, field condenses, becomes a lot more quick. Play calling it's got to be more creative, and it just doesn't seem to work out for both teams. My second question is, do you feel that game against the Niners was just a horrible off night, or do you feel you need to make moves at the deadline to get up to the Niners level if you do face them again, deep into the NFC playoffs?
It's really hard to say,
Yeah.
especially looking at the Niners these last 2 weeks. They're definitely a beatable team. I mean, the Browns go beat them without their starting running back, without their starting quarterback, and then the Vikings just beat them without Justin Jefferson. So
it's weird.
I honestly feel that it's something about it's obviously could be that rivalry from the 90s, but the 49ers just sincerely hate us like with every ounce that they have in their body because when they play us, they look like a completely different team. So I would say going into that game, coming out of that game, I would look to add a receiver at the deadline. That was kind of the main thing. I'm not too concerned about the defense because our defense, again, throughout the years, they have some games where they look great and they have some games where they look bad. It's just football. You're going to get out schemed and you're going to get out coached. It's going to happen. the offense just failed to look any type of productive besides, the one touchdown that they threw to Turpin, earlier in the game. The offense couldn't move the ball, and we didn't look good like all around. So I would definitely say a receiver going into this trade deadline.
So coming into this game, the Cowboys are 7-point favorites. They are the touchdown favorites at home. Over under set at 45.5. What are some of your keys and expectations going into this matchup against the Rams? The Rams, it's weird because even with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua obviously has had just an incredible season out of the middle of nowhere. Cooper Kupp back, they're still not playing to the level that many expected, but it still seems like that Super Bowl team was the big 1-year thing for them, and they're kind of on their way out. Some of these guys, Stafford hasn't been great. So I got 6 picks, I think 7 touchdowns, which isn't a great difference there. What are some of your keys going into this matchup against a Rams team that is 3-4, and you guys obviously looking to pick up your 5th win?
I'm gonna say don't overlook the Rams. The last 2 times we've played them, it's been close games, and Cooper Kupp has killed us both times. So now with Cooper Kupp and you got Puka Nacua, it's the focus for us is definitely gonna be getting them off the field on 3rd down. Don't let them extend drives because those guys, that team, their record doesn't really indicate of like that football team. They've had some rough weeks, but that's still a good team. So I'm definitely going to say that they need to just focus on getting them off on the field of 3rd down. Dumb penalties, obviously, like against San Francisco a few times, bonehead penalties that kind of hurt us, shooting ourselves in the foot. We're going to have to focus on stopping their offense because they might not light up the scoreboard, but, you can't count out Sean McVay.
Yeah, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp is an excellent 1-2 punch. And, obviously the Rams they still got, as we all know, a lot of talent, even with them not playing quite to where they were 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl. So overall, what is your optimism in this game? And what would be what is your official prediction as the Cowboys look to pick up another win?
Optimism is just go in there and just get out with the win. As we can see, Philly has, I know it's weird to throw Philly in there. We haven't even spoke about Philly, but just talking about the division. Philly hasn't looked too great, so I feel like they're going to slip up later on down the road. They snuck out with a few ones. So every win counts because we are playing, catch up right now with the Eagles. So every win going into every week, we need to take one and kind of hope they lose one. But we just have to handle our business as of now and don't worry too much about what's going on later on down the road. But just try to stay neck and neck in the division.
Yeah, don't want. What were you saying?
I was saying score prediction. I would just say it's going to be a close game. 27-17 Dallas.
Yeah. You were mentioning, I agree with your point. You don't want to have this be a trap game where you're looking too far ahead. You've obviously got Philly on the road next week. You have an opportunity to go into that game off of 2 wins against 2 teams that, definitely beatable. You go into that game, you feel good. So you don't want to let that be a trap game. I also picked the Cowboys to win this game. I just think they're the better football team. They looked better. The Chargers game was solid win for them. You're coming off the bye week. They're well rested. I just like them over the Rams here. So I'll also take the Cowboys. So moving on here to the AFC, and then we'll go back to the and we'll stay in the AFC for the Steelers Jags a little bit later on, and also bounce over to the Niners Bengals game. But the Jets today play up against the Giants. The Jets enter this game as 3-point favorites. It's the battle in New York. As a Jet fan, very nervous, but I'm just hoping come away with the victory. However, whatever it takes. What was, just from an outsider, what are your thoughts, going into this game? A Jet team that is coming off a massive win against Philly, obviously now coming off the bye week, surprised a lot of people. 3-3, even without Aaron Rodgers. Last time we spoke when they were coming off that loss against the Cowboys, there really wasn't much hope at the time because Zach did not look good. You were looking at the schedule and you said, man, we still have Philly, we still have Kansas City, all these teams on our schedule, but they're 3-3 and they've got a winnable game against a 2-5 Giants team. So what are your thoughts on the outside, as an outside fan on this game between 2 teams, and obviously the Giants impacting, your own division?
Looking at this from the Jets angle, I think this is a great opportunity to continue that momentum from the Eagles game. Like you said, that was a huge win. And that was a game probably anyone besides Jets fans and maybe the Jets themselves realistically probably thought they weren't going to win. So they have to carry that momentum over and just do exactly what they've been doing with Zach Wilson the last few games, which is protecting him and not forcing him, have to really do more than just manage the game. The defense has been played great. They've been exceptional. So again, get turnovers for Zach Wilson and give him less room to have to make mistakes and have to, drive the field. And that's going to be the key for them to win that game today if they can go into, this game and pull it out. I would say for the Giants, Tyrod Taylor running that offense, they look like a complete different team.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot harder for you guys, coming up this Sunday because they actually move the ball very effectively. And with him playing quarterback, it looks more or less of, well, Saquon, and we're going to get other guys involved. They're spreading the ball around. So it's going to be a low-scoring game. But I do feel the Jets will pull this one out today.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's right. But, I don't. These matchups against the Giants, we've won the last two. You go all the way back to 2011 when Victor Cruz had the big touchdown against us. We've dominated the last two times in 2015 and 2019. But you mentioned, Zach Wilson against the blitz. The Giants, even though they've played more zone recently, they are still one of the most heaviest blitzing teams in football, fourth in the NFL, and 99 total blitzes, and they've also got a 41.6% blitz percentage or blitz rate, which both rank fourth in the NFL. So they're definitely up there in the top of the league. Is Zach Wilson does not handle the blitz very well. They're going to blitz a lot, short, quick passes. Breece Hall, it's going to be wet, rainy. The weather is going to be really bad at MetLife. Just feed Breece, run the ball, get enough out of your offensive line, even with Joe Tittman out. And I think you should come away with the victory. I predicted the Jets to come away here 17-14. What are your thoughts on, the NFCs? Because, the Giants as a whole, what are your thoughts on, the Giants, and where do you feel some of it's kind of went south this year for them? Even they're 2-5 and they've still got a chance, but at the beginning of the year, some people were talking about this being a 9-10 win team that could compete in the NFC. And right now they've got their season of life support. What have you seen from them from an in-division, perspective?
I hate to say it, but I felt like last year's Giants run was a fluke. And I called it last year. And it's not just being, that they play in our division, but just going back to last year, Daniel Jones, again, he didn't really, surprise me. I'm not going to say he wasn't worth the contract because, he's not really playing with much right now. He doesn't have the weapons around him like other quarterbacks got. So I give him like mad respect to take that team that you have, some of that season without Saquon and to go to the playoffs. But just the NFC East or the NFC in general, that's a hard conference. That's a hard division to play in. So I really didn't expect the Giants to drop off how they did this season, but I did maybe expect around 7 to 8 wins. So where they're sitting at right now is actually quite surprising.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised too. And it's just crazy how the offenses look so much better with Tyrod, and hopefully the Jets can contain him today in his mobility. Something else, we talked with the Cowboys about some of the red zone struggles. The Jets today, red zone's got to be a key. I love Greg Zuerlein. He's great. He's an awesome kicker, but I want to see less of him. We got to start, punching it in instead of just him kicking field goals all the time, because we've been one of the worst red zone offenses in football, and hopefully that can come out of the bye and make adjustments, and we see improvement there. So both taking the Jets here. I'll take the Jets 17-14. I think it's a low-scoring game. Jets win these low-scoring games. I think they have the defense advantage. The reality is the Jets are the more talented football team in this game. If the Jets do not win, I really feel it's going to be on coaching and just not prepared coming out of the bye week, which they haven't been recently. So hopefully that changes today. Moving on here to the other AFC matchup I want to get into, Jaguars-Steelers. Big one in Pittsburgh. The weather also looks really bad there, so we could see a ground and pound game. Very low scoring. Defense comes out on top. 5-2 Jags, 4-2 Steelers. It's weird because the Steelers this season, with all the outside noise around the offense, it seems like they would be a 1-5 team, but they're 4-2 and they're right in the heart of it in the AFC. I guess we could start with them. What have been your thoughts on them? Matt Canada, all the news around him, but they're still 4-2. Their defense is great. TJ Watt's dominant. What are your thoughts on the Steelers?
Like you just said, they've actually been quite surprising with everything that was talked about in the offseason. And even the games where you watch Pittsburgh and they don't look too good, you're like, this can easily be a 1-5 team or just maybe not even win a game. They've had some pretty bad games. But then you look at them kind of in these closer games that they're playing, how they're pulling these games out. You're just like, maybe the offense isn't that much of a concern, or it could be the defense is just covering for the
Yeah.
offense of what's going on. But this is a team I would not sleep on the Steelers, not just this game, but just moving forward. Because like you said, they're in the hardest division right now. Now, if I'm correct, I think everyone is like a game apart, half a game apart, so they're not out of it, and they have a fairly easy schedule kind of moving forward. So I think this Pittsburgh team could make a late push and probably sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah, their defense is good enough. I mean, their defense is so dominant. Again, headlined by TJ Watt. But you made a great point because their losses this season, they were outscored 60-13 in their 2 losses. And all of their wins, they haven't had that one crazy, commanding, dominant victory. You go back a couple weeks where they beat the Ravens. It was from, some late heroics by the defense. And then obviously that big play to, I believe it was George Pickens from Pickett, obviously, which was a crazy game. It was just a weird game all around. They won that. Then they beat the Rams again last week as well on the road. So they picked up some nice road wins. They're back home. They've got 3 straight games. And you mentioned their schedule. You have the Jaguars this week. After this week, they've got 2 games against the Titans and the Packers, who 2 teams that could look a lot different in a couple weeks, especially the Titans. If Derrick Henry gets dealt, they've obviously gone rid of, Kevin Byard already. He's with the Eagles now. They can really make up some ground here. You win today, you could be looking at Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks as a 5-2 team right now. If they come away today with the victory, as a 6-3, 7-2 team right in the heart of it in the AFC North. Everyone's talking about the Ravens, and rightfully so, but the Steelers are right there. Moving on to the Jaguars, what have been your impressions from them? A little bit different than the Steelers. I think they are more of a balanced team. I still feel like the Jaguars, even though their 5-1 record is solid, I still feel like they haven't fully broken through yet as all the expectations that were put on them in the offseason. I feel like they're starting to get to that point, but there's been some of these wins for them where they've kind of been a little bit uglier, but they've had 3 good weeks in a row where they took down Buffalo, took down Indy, took down New Orleans, where their offense was able to, play well. Are you starting to see the Jags turn a corner after, starting 1-2? They've won 4 straight.
They're slowly getting there, but before I get to my point, I 100% agree with what you're saying. Like the expectations so far,
Yeah.
I feel like they've underperformed because last
definitely.
season, that late push, everyone's like, all right, here goes Jacksonville. Myself, I have an article up where I thought Jacksonville could win 11 to 12 games, which they're still like in that range to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But they've started slow, and it's kind of a big part of that is starting with the offense because there's a lot of these games they're starting out slow. And they are just, pulling it out at the end or second half. They're starting to figure it out. But Jacksonville just moving forward for the rest of the season is going to have to be getting that offense rolling in the first half because come playoff time, similar to last year against the Chargers, you're not going to have those games where you start out super slow and you pull this miraculous comeback. But a win today for Jacksonville, if they can pull it off and you're sitting at, 6-2, I think you're in a pretty good spot. You're in a pretty, easy division where you don't really have to worry about too many teams making a push because, they're not on that same level as Jacksonville. So for them, it's really going to be just trying to figure it out offensively. Defenses look good and just continue to feed your weapons. Get Calvin Ridley more involved. Let's start with that also. Get him more involved. And I think as they do that, they'll start rolling.
Yeah, Calvin Ridley has been a tough one for a lot of fantasy teams out there that were very high on him going into the season. But yeah, you mentioned that Chargers game. Not every playoff game are you going to be able to face against Brandon Staley, who's just a terrible coach that's going to blow leads like that. So they've got to start faster. Big game on the road for them. Always a tough environment in Pittsburgh. Always the loud stadium, the crazy towels and all that stuff. What is your prediction? Coming into this game. I'm actually going to take the Steelers. I just like them at home here. I think their defense is going to take care of business. It's going to be a wet, rainy game. It just seems like one of those games where defense is going to come on top, and I like Pittsburgh a little bit more. So I'll take Pittsburgh plus 2.5 in the win. What is your pick here?
That one's tough. If it is a wet and rainy game, I feel like Jacksonville runs the better, a lot better than Pittsburgh does. But Pittsburgh is more built for these, these muddy, slow type of games, not that much offensive going on. If I had to take a guess, I'm going to also take Pittsburgh at home.
Yeah, I think it's Mike Tomlin just loves to win these games where they're like these low scoring, ugly games. Like Jacksonville, I would say that they are the more talented football team. I think a lot of people can agree,
Mhm.
but it's at home, loud environment. I'm going to take Mike Tomlin and the coaching, the defense, especially, again, Jacksonville, the run offense is very good, but if they get off to one of those slow starts early on that we talked about on the road, it's tough to come back from that. So I'm definitely agreeing there with you, taking Pittsburgh. So moving on to another matchup here, which in the beginning of the week, we thought we'd be seeing former Jet Sam Darnold take the field for San Francisco. Comes out yesterday, Brock Purdy was cleared to play. I guess we'll start with Brock Purdy. What have been your impressions on him this season? Started really strong early on. No Debo the last 2 weeks, or, obviously left the Browns game and wasn't there last week in Minnesota. He'll also be out again this week. What have been your impressions on Brock Purdy? Do you feel that he's just struggling because, is he just struggling, or do you feel he's struggling because of some of the lack of weapons around him that are now hurt the last 2 weeks and going into this game?
I feel like there's two things that play a part into it. One, he's starting to get figured out by a
Yeah.
lot of these teams. Going back to watch our game, a lot of what they were doing is really, throwing the ball over the middle and against zone, and they were just killing our zone defenses. So a lot of teams are kind of switching up how they play zone defense and also blitzing and bringing pressure and forcing him to make mistakes, which is what we weren't doing. And I also feel, and it could be a salty Cowboys fan, but I've always felt that he was a system quarterback. And he's just running the system very well. But when you're in a system with arguably the best offensive coordinator in all of football, maybe the best running back in all of football, the best defense in all of football, you should succeed. I mean, no disrespect to Brock Purdy and the 49ers, but Jimmy G just took the team to the Super Bowl not too long ago. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like he's hopped in and he's did anything special. He's running the offense very well. He's just starting to get figured out. And as the season goes on, I feel like they're going to lose a few more games. And before the season started, I predicted they lose about 6 or 7. Right now they're at 2, and they could drop another one today.
Yeah, especially Cincinnati because they're getting hot. It's interesting. It's definitely it's weird because he was so good. Now it seems like, yes, teams are figuring out also lack of weapons. Either way, losing a game to Kirk Cousins on primetime is not a good look because that's not supposed to happen. So yeah, they'll get the home game here against the Bengals. Bengals, it's almost like they're an opposite of San Francisco, where they started out 1-3. A lot of people, I still believed in Cincinnati just because of Joe Burrow. He's going to come out of it eventually. He had the injury. They had the bye week. They've been playing a lot better. They come out of the bye week here fresh off their win against Seattle 2 weeks ago. They come out. They get a couple really big games here on the road in San Francisco, and then next week on Sunday night against the Bills. I feel they've got to split these two games. So these are two big games. What are your thoughts on Cincinnati? As I mentioned, 3 of their last 4 wins. They've won 2 straight. They're starting to seem to turn it around after a really rough start, similar to last year. They got off to a slow start and they turned it around, and obviously they had a successful season. Fell short, but still got to the playoffs and made a deep run. Are you seeing the same here with Cincinnati? Do they feel this is a start of a big run for them, even though 3 of their next 4 games come up against really solid teams in San Francisco today, Buffalo, and even Baltimore in a couple weeks, and even Houston, who's been an interesting, solid team this year? What are your thoughts on Cincinnati?
I feel like when it comes to Cincinnati and their slow start, as long as you got Joe Burrow, there's no need to worry. Just stay patient and just wait for it to get rolling. Because, like you said, they started this way last year, and everyone panicked. Like, what are the Bengals doing? Are they gonna make the playoffs? Is it time to make some trades? And I understand that in that division, especially this season, you can't afford to slip up and lose these games. But I would not worry about Cincinnati moving forward. Again, Joe Burrow is going to eventually do his thing. They're still waiting on T. Higgins to get rolling. Jamar Chase is finally getting rolling. Joe Mixon hasn't even looked as well as he's looked, in his career. So as far as Cincinnati, if we're going to worry about anything, it's going to be the defense. Don't worry about the offense, but the defense has come around the last few weeks. But when they do get into these games, San Francisco today, because you never know how they may come out, and then you got Buffalo, and then you got the Ravens. You're going to need your defense to ball those games. They might be low scoring, they might be shootouts, kind of, just depending on, again, how their defense is looking. The defense is my focal point for the Bengals to turn this whole thing around.
Yeah, and you mentioned how the defense has gotten better, and I totally agree because you even go back to that Seahawks win. They held the Seahawks in the red zone, fourth down. Geno Smith, it was incomplete, or I believe he got hit and it was incomplete, and they ended up winning that game. So it was a big stand by the defense. They're continuing to improve. But again, there's too much talent on this team to just all of a sudden not be good. Last year, I was saying, okay, maybe this team isn't as good, but I've learned from that. I'm not going to predict the Bengals to miss out on the postseason this year. Again, their schedule: San Francisco, Buffalo, Houston, Ravens, even the Steelers, and then Jacksonville. So the next 6 weeks, they've got their work cut out for them. They're playing some solid teams. I think their worst team they play is the Texans, who are actually still 500. And, CJ Stroud's been great this year so far to open up his career. So if they can win a couple of these next games and I guess kind of put the slow start behind them and get some of these big wins, it'll really go a long way, both from the narrative on the outside and inside that locker room. But Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, all those pieces, they're too talented not to work. What is your prediction going into this game? I'm going to take the Bengals. I'm going with another underdog here. Bengals +4. San Francisco has just not looked good. They're without Debo again. I'm going to take Cincy on the road here, continue the momentum from the last 2 wins. What about you?
I also like Cincy. I know it's going to be so hard to really predict San Francisco losing 3 consecutive games, but after seeing what Jordan Addison did to their secondary last week, I can just imagine what Jamar Chase is going to do this week. Hopefully nothing too crazy. I play against him on fantasy and much needed spot 4 win. But I'm going to take Cincy this week of a total score of 31-20.
Nice. Yeah, I think they're going to win this. I think they're going to win by a pretty commanding victory. I think I think they'll probably put up, 27, 28. And I think their defense is going to hold Purdy because if we're being honest, the San Francisco offense has just simply not been good the last 2 weeks. And again, on primetime too, against the Vikings defense that wasn't very good. So those are the 4 games that we preview here today. Any other thoughts, any other big matchups heading into this game, both player matchups or any other, big games that you're looking out for as well on this Sunday slate?
I am looking forward to Houston and Carolina, seeing, picks 1 and 2 face off against one another.
Yep.
Well, my main, focus for that is Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen has been insane this season. It almost came out of nowhere, like what he's been doing. So I'm really excited to see him against that Houston secondary. Are they going to maybe, try to play some safety help on him? What is there going to be their way to take him out of the game? That's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, even with Bryce Young having some early growing pains, it's still fun to watch number 1 and number 2 go up against each other. And the Panthers, actually, Frank Reich handed over the play calling, so we'll see if that makes an impact. But Adam Thielen has been a fantasy football gem. I picked him up, and he's been in my lineup every week. And it was weird because when the Panthers traded away DJ Moore, many people were wondering, why would they do that? Obviously, they get the number 1 overall pick, but DJ Moore's solid. He's getting, he's only getting better. You brought in Thielen, who is kind of seemed like he was washed up in Minnesota. And now he comes here and he's been rejuvenated, which is definitely a benefit to my fantasy football team. And we'll see if they pull away their first win. Who do you got winning in this matchup? And, well, I guess 2-parter. What have been your thoughts on CJ Stroud before we get into the prediction? Because he's been great. It took him a while to throw his first interception.
I think how he's been this season has actually been quite funny. His preseason performances and, those interceptions in the preseason was like Jamar Chase when he first came in and, had a rough preseason.
Yep.
And it's just been a complete different player. He's been very well, and their offense hasn't even, reached their limit yet. He does have some great weapons around him. So I feel like really put some guys around him to help him win. And he gets Tank Dell back today. So Tank Dell back, you got Nico Collins, who's looking good. They're starting to run the ball a lot more effectively. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of him, and I think he's actually going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I think he's heading in that direction as well. Again, he's looked a lot better than Bryce Young. Playing turnover-free football, which I think is the most impressive part. Again, the 9 touchdowns is great, the 1,600 yards, all that good stuff. He's had 2 games, I believe, over 300 yards, which is sometimes difficult for a rookie. But again, the turnover-free football after such a disappointing preseason, and it seemed like we were heading in that direction where we're going to see another Ohio State quarterback not work out because we've seen a lot of those before. But seeing him play turnover-free football is so crucial because a lot of times rookies, the biggest thing they struggle with is turning the ball over, specifically quarterbacks. We saw, Zach Wilson did a lot of it. Darnold, just some jet quarterbacks I'm naming, but we've seen a lot have turnover problems in their rookie year. CJ Stroud has one interception, through 6 games this season, and it took him until his 6th game to throw that pick. And you could probably say that might have been his worst game because he had a completion percentage under 50%, but he still did enough, and they found a way to win. He still had 2 touchdowns, so even in that game, he was able to, put up some numbers. What is your prediction going into this matchup? Number 1 versus number 2 overall pick.
I'm going to take Houston today. I'm going to take Houston 30-20 if I'm predicting the score. I feel like Carolina is starting to figure it out. Each week they're starting to get more players involved, still kind of waiting on Miles Sanders, but they're figuring it out. They're going to eventually sneak out the win here in the next few weeks, but it's just not going to be today.
No, I agree. And even that Dolphins game, they got off to the quick start. They put up some points against Detroit, even though they got blown out. I think they put up 24, albeit some of them were garbage time. But they're starting to produce a little bit more on offense than they were, the first 2 weeks where I think they scored 10 and 17. So they're starting to put up a little bit more numbers. When do you see Carolina's first win coming? I mean, I looking at their schedule, they got the Bears in a couple of weeks, which is winnable unless if Tyler Badgett just balls out. But what are your thoughts on Carolina? When do you see them picking up their first win here over the next couple games?
Off the top of my head, I am not sure what the rest of their divisional games look like. It's going to be one of those. I feel like if they have Atlanta somewhere down the road, they're going to sneak out with Atlanta.
Yeah, I could see that too. They almost beat. It was funny because they almost beat New Orleans week 2, and then the division outside of Houston and Jacksonville, that AFC South is pretty weak. Indy is all right. They're in games, but obviously Falcons and Texans in the NFC South, but the AFC South, Jacksonville, and then you've got Houston who's solid, but outside of that, it's not great, including the Colts too. I think they get them 2 weeks after this week, which will be interesting. But the NFC South is interesting. Both South divisions really are kind of interesting.
If we're talking about the Panthers, that's going to be NFC South with the Panthers, the Falcons,
Saints.
the Saints, and the Bucks. So we're looking at those 4 teams. None of those 4 teams. Well, the Bucks started off, kind of hot, but none of those teams has really in the last few weeks really just showed we're worthy of that 4th spot. Coming to the playoff. So if they, sitting at is it 0-6, I believe.
Yep.
You're going to need a miraculous run to make any playoff effort. But from what we can see with some other teams, you're never out of it until you're out of it. So they could figure it out. They could, win today and spark something, moving forward. But Carolina's not as bad as it seems. They're a lot better than what their record shows.
Yeah, they've been in some games, and again, it's a rookie quarterback, new coach. There's going to be some growing pains, which is expected. It's not all going to be smooth like Houston, who has been pretty smooth so far. So that'll do it for another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, DiMari. Where can everybody find you and all your work and stuff like that?
If you want to find me on Twitter, it's LWOSDCooley6, and that's mainly what I use. If you want to read some articles, lwosports.com/DiMari Cooley. You can find all my articles that way.
Yeah, definitely go check them out. A lot of great content, and appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely do this again. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy your football Sunday, and thanks for watching.